Welcome back to some professional StarCraft 2. I give you one of the most professional StarCraft 2 players. His specialty is winning. The prime antagonist, it is the final boss, Dark. Now, while Dark is a world champion, it's not quite as recent as his Terran opponent, who had the best day in the history of StarCraft 2 after 13 years. It is a normal man. It's Oliveira. Now, on an average day, a normal man is usually gonna struggle against a final boss. And I think right now, Dark is just... He knows he's got his mandatory military service coming up. He's been absolutely eviscerating the competition mentally, physically, emotionally. But Oliveira specializes in the same part of the game that I think Dark is strongest in, which is that late game. Terran versus Zerg especially, but just around. Oliveira is not afraid to go the distance. But I'm going to ask you not to go very far. All the way down here. And smash that like button. Maybe subscribe if you haven't made it there yet. But thank you for tuning in. Several people reached out and asked me to cast this particular game and series, which I appreciate that people enjoy my... I'm going to go with unique style of commentary, which in many cases can be a compliment, but also can cover for a backhanded insult. You decide which one. Well, Banshees with Cloak. Up against just your standard opener. We're not aggressive. It's the macro map. Oliveira, I wouldn't be surprised to see a dozen command centers by the end. And Dark, borrowing some of his units. Lurkers have been the order of the day. Yeah, well, we have to get to the late game first. I don't know why I'm skipping there. Neither of these players look willing to do so, as already 8 roaches in production for Dark. Hellions dancing around at the natural. But enough roaches to be a real and present danger. As the Banshee is being sent... Well, okay, he's keeping the Banshees back at home. Will the roaches be spotted? No. Or at least the Hellions are choosing to ignore them. The Banshees being back at home, holding on to them until Cloak will work out here, as there will be no other defense for these roaches besides the SCVs themselves. Not well known for fighting... Okay, one Marie. A lot of damage is going to be dealt. The Hellions in an incredibly awkward position, like halfway across the map. Dark clearly knows that the Hellions exist here. The Queens move to body block. No drones lost. Meanwhile, roaches taken out by a couple Banshees. 2 Banshees will clean this up rather quickly. And Oliveira does have 3 command centers, and it's very easy to bounce back from minor economic losses with 3 command centers. The one thing is, it's Dark. He's almost at... Despite the roaches, despite any sort of Hellion pressure, despite building all these queens, he's already nearing 70 drones at 6 minutes and counting. He's getting Zergling and Roach speed. He actually skipped Zergling speed to be able to do this Roach timing. He just explodes economically after a almost leisurely stroll into the natural with the Roaches. Banshees will do a bit to cut down on that, cut down on the drone count, but it's already too late. The time to do damage to the drones is before they hit that 55-60 mark. If you can get in and kill 10 drones then, like Dark killed SCVs, that can significantly hamstring the exponential growth of the Zerg. But Dark is running free with it right now. 81 drones. Infestation pit. +1/+1. He's got a Baneling nest as well. A macro hatch. I wouldn't be surprised to see even more hatcheries behind it. The one thing he is supply blocked. And that's the only thing really slowing him down at the moment. Double drop heading out. +1 for Oliveira. It's not like he's too far behind. He's got so many barracks in the main base, going up to the Octo Rex. Now, will it be in time to match Doc, who already starts his hive? 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Losing a lot of... He's going to be supply blocked again. This is the biggest mistake so far. Not even really a mistake, but not building enough overlords in order to absorb these losses will slow him down a bit. Not even a bite, just a bit so far. 1-1 done for Oliveira, but those Marines without combat shield have no chance against the Roach count. Dark with infestors, pathogen glands. He's got Baneling speed, more hatcheries. Taking the center base. This is like a Terran production tab. I'm so used to the Terrans being the ones that are ruining the screen with the amount of stuff they have simultaneously producing. Drop, kind of skirting around the edges, not really finding anything. Another attempt. A handful of Zerglings, gonna be enough to shut it down. Fungal, just to let him know he's not wanted. It looks like the Marines don't care too much. They shrug off the damage with the medevacs. Banshees are still intact. So now we ask, what does Dark intend to actually attack with? He's got Vipers on the way. Oliveira isn't slouching on supply. One thing he did was get his production up very quickly. So even though he lost a bit of SCVs earlier on, he's now sitting on 100 army supply. Plenty of tanks. Hellbats mixed in. Can buffer. The siege tank's not even sieging up here. Spreading out. A little bit late on the siege up, for sure. Corrosive Biles will actually manage to miss the tank entirely. But Dark, without those Vipers, doesn't have an easy way to break this position. We know those Vipers exist. I doubt Oliveira is going to be expecting him quite this quickly. Pre-10 minutes. Hatchery taking a lot of damage. I don't know if there are queens for transfuse. Scanning forward. Sees both bases. Might be able to pick off 2 hatcheries simultaneously. Down goes 1. Dark, not ready here. Some transfuses keep the other hatch alive for now. Infestor targeted. A lot of bio goes down to kill it, but that center base dangerously close to death. Where are the Vipers during all this? Dark! An uncharacteristic mistake, kind of forgetting about the Vipers. They're near full energy, fondly being dragged into the fight. But he loses the hatch. Big counterattack simultaneously. Binding Cloud negates all of the siege tanks besides the very front, which is going to be picked off. Counterattack is shut down as well. The flank from the Zerglings. Hellbat's starting to protect it. Tanks grinding through. And Dark is able to clean this up, but interestingly, we have to ask ourselves the question. At what cost? A significant one, losing several thousand more minerals as Oliveira ground through over 100 Zerglings in order to get those bases. The hatcheries as well, not able to use that huge... In fact, maybe too many drones at the end of the day. Not able to get his army count up enough in order to challenge Oliveira's army before it killed the hatcheries. But Dark is very used to working with less economy. It's just a bonus if he's able to have more bases. I don't think he's gonna flinch at the idea of being down in supply versus a Terran, as now he has his favored tools. The Infestors, the Vipers. What more do you need? Well, ideally some units to back him up, though it's not entirely required. Oliveira still keeping up his production. He's got the 4th base, adding a 5th command center, +2. Infantry weapons is done. Armor on the way, pretty far off. +3 infantry weapons begins as well. Liberator gonna siege up. The drones in a pretty terrible position, getting double sieged right now. No parasitic bomb to follow up the fungal. 10 drones down. Dark scrambling to deal with this still. Oliveira retakes this position. And the overlapping siege here is making a very difficult situation even worse for Dark. He's wrapping around with the Zerglings. They're in the center of the map right now. Corrosive Biles knocks some of this down. Reinforcements intercepted. I don't know what Dark is waiting for. Parasitic Bomb. Corrosive Bile. Knocks down some of the medevacs. Another snipe on the hatchery, though. The Viper's starting to gain more and more value, but Oliveira, oh my god, he hard-walled off his entire base. At least it got close to it. I'm not sure. Zerglings can slip through, but just a maze of depots is going to make it nearly impossible for Zerglings to make it through into the mineral line. And Dark is still struggling. He's alive, but only just. Oliveira, 150 supply. Playing like the more recent world champion right now. Dark is chasing down the army. The medevac's nearly out of energy. Many of them taken out in the brawl outside the third. Picks up the tanks, boosts them into position, gets a good siege up. And Dark not going to be able to crack that position quite yet. The counterattack being just shut down by the Sim City here. The supply depot's for not a hard wall, but very close to it. Dark didn't bring any banelings with the counterattack. And he's going to be regretting that, though I don't think he had enough time to really think about regret, as he was desperately trying to deal with the overlapping siege. Oliveira in command of this game right now, and Dark scrambling just to put enough on the field to match him. Once again, this hatchery never even gonna finish. Cancel. No, those aren't the Banshees. I'm not sure what happened to the Banshees. I think the Banshees died. Yeah, the Banshees died. But the Ravagers. Zergling's getting us around. Oliveira not picking up here. Gets at the last second, almost gets caught with the Fungal Bile combo. Another set to the south. Dark is slipping back towards even supply, though. Adding more and more infestors, losing more and more infestors. It gets one good fungal off. Not able to pick up while they're fungled. Loses one medevac as well. Dark still manages to scrap together enough army. More infestors on the way. I was about to mention the one glaring, the one piece clearly missing, the ghosts. But now being added in. Again, small numbers of infestors, usually you're better off with just some siege tanks and liberators, but once they get towards the double digits, the EMP is near required. Trying to drag out the Widowmine, hits his Dark. Splitting the Lings against it. Corrosive Bile to knock out the mines after they fire. 4 ghosts in production at once now, but the infestors are already here. Another round of Corrosive Bile takes out the siege tank, and the Ravagers starting to grind through. Oliveira becoming less and less effective against all... It's all spellcasters here, besides the Zerglings. The Corrosive Bile, the Vipers, the Infestors. Nobody's quite the Wizard Dark is with these spellcasters. And Oliveira needs his own to match it. Those ghosts are required. The Liberators to zone out and force the Biles on things that aren't siege tanks. Remember, though, behind all this, he's been essentially untouched economically. He has still managed to keep up that supply. Parasitic Bomb to chase down the medevacs. That's the extent of the anti-air. But is slowly and surely Gale's won. Most players will only aim for the big clumps, but Dark just takes what damage he can get because he's confident he's going to keep those spellcasters alive. Burrow on the way. Northern Planetary fully established. The income tilts back in favor of Oliveira, even though Dark has made it a lot closer to even than you might have expected with how this game has gone. Dark is the one nearing a max out, while Oliveira still struggling. Big Ling Bang counterattack. Sensor tower will spot it, but I don't know if there are any units in position to deal with it. Meanwhile, the Ghosts starting to move forward. Oliveira once again has established that courtyard position. At the bottom of those ramps, the Banelings, SCV is going to go down alongside the Planetary. But just diving through the center again is Oliveira in the Valley of Death, but not death for him, as the siege tanks run all the way back to the high ground. Fungals thrown out. EMP landed on some of the infestors, but not nearly enough to stop the Fungals from chaining together. Another round. One infestor in front. Ghost at 1 HP. Zerglings chasing down. The attention to detail from Dar. He's got Burrow nearly complete as well, which could add another wrinkle to things here. There I mentioned Banelin Knights. Well, Adrenal Glands. Ooh, that is late. He missed one of the most important damage upgrades for Zerglings, though he hasn't been too focused on the unit. The siege line runs so deep right now. The siege tanks, the ghosts, the marines, all the weak units being cut out, the medevacs and marines, but the ghosts, the mines, and the siege tanks covering multiple screens at the moment. Dark has not dealt with Microbial Shroud, which I think was a misclick while trying to fire off Corrosive Bile. The ghosts in the shroud. Slowly but surely working his way through the Widow Mines. Difficult to spot on the Kree. And Dark is still under so much pressure from Oliveira's... Wow, this is just... He's just so good at it. Like no other Terran. Really, even beyond, who I think is one of the best late-game Terrans when he commits to it, does not really commit this hard to the idea of siege. I've never seen this wide of a siege line. I think I like it. Big counterattack again. The SCVs? I don't even hear anymore. I don't know where they went. I don't see them evacuating, but oh my god, what a placement. Beautifully set up. The siege line continues. Oh, but all the ghosts caught by fungal. We gotta zoom out. Alright, we gotta... I need to be able to zoom out more. One of the main failings of StarCraft 2 is how close we are to the battle. Dangerously close as an observer. Well, more siege tanks trying to drag the mines out. Binding Cloud. There's just so many tanks to hit, but the Ravagers are working their way through. Oliveira, he actually up... We've arrived! I don't know how the hell a queen got over here, but she is standing on what was once an orbital command. Still a few tanks, a handful of mines, but Dark manages to dislodge that entire position and gain a 20 supply lead. It was a very thin defense for the siege tanks outside of the other tanks themselves, which a well-prepared Zerg can dismantle. And there are no more well-prepared Zergs. Well, Infestors looking for their opportunity. Doesn't have Neural Parasite. Still, oh well, here comes Dark, but the fungals are added in. Parasitic Bomb Fungal combo. Dark just collapses on the army. And he picks up into a medevac that immediately dies to Parasitic Bomb. And Dark seems like he's done it yet again. He's turned the tables on Oliveira despite such an incredible position. Just now finishing +3 for both siege tanks. I don't know how many siege tanks are left. One. That's not very many. There's still a lot of bases for Dark to kill, but if he just goes for the production, that can prevent any further defensive said bases. The ramp, a few ghosts on the top of the ramp here. Mostly infestors, without energy, aren't going to be able to do much for breaking that position. And Dark is actually thrown back for now. Another orbital on the way. Oliveira has to rebuild supply depots. A planetary to the north. There's still Widow Mines out there, ready to fire again. Dark dealing with it. The Corrosive, the addition of Ravagers. No one quite uses Ravagers like them. Those Ravagers is just a constant kind of a janitor unit. Just looking for any opportunity to snipe off. They're useful against the mines, tanks, add some potential anti-air. A surprising amount of medevacs get taken out. But Oliveira lived. Which is much better than not, in my experience. Dark still has a supply lead, but his army composition is not particularly great at cracking this situation. Well, Widowmine doesn't get too much. Oh, another hit. The supply is starting to dip here. Another mine, and another one. He's holding, chunking through the Zerglings here. The Broodling. The Infestors just chilling. siege tank back at home. Dark has re-established most of the bases to the south. Oliveira still holding on to the ones to the north. The supplies are getting dangerously close to even. There's no lurkers. Not even any ultras, though I don't know if those would be particularly great in this scenario. Parasitic Bomb, Blinding Cloud combo. I mean, not really a combo, but throwing everything out there. Trying to escape before the turret finishes. Realizes at the last moment, but pops out right next to the tank. Within that zone it can't fire. And the medevac's badly bruised, but do get away. Dark overrunning the north. The ghosts will cloak, but there is detection here. Is there anything to keep the planetaries not dying? The SCVs repaired it, and suddenly Oliveira takes the supply lead yet again. One infestor. Oh no, he won't. He goes right into it, and Oliveira has held the line. Siege tank at the front. The ghost getting surrounded, picked up at the last second. Not a fungal to be able to deal with that medevac. And now Dark, just lacking in any real late game options besides the spellcaster. He doesn't have the lurkers or ultras or broodlords. None of those hive tech options that you're used to seeing actually break a Terran. Oh, the Widowmine's gonna help. But at the end of the day, he doesn't have anything to trade with a planetary fortress. I know that sounds odd, but I think Oliveira has turned it around. He refused. He gave up everything but his production and his economy. He gave up that third base. I know that sounds silly, but he managed to hold the ramp and his planetaries, even if all the softer bases died. But having 4 planetaries is going to give you quite an economy. The SCV count is even. The Widow Mines are intact. The Zerglings are desperate to counter, but not really finding anything here. The mines are taking such huge chunks, and Oliveira beats Dark at his own game. The late game. Quite an impressive late game play. And I love the overlapping sieges. Just beautifully executed there. I don't think at any point there was really a big mistake or anything out of Oliveira. It was just Dark dismantling those siege lines. But in order to do that, he never had a follow-up. He never really had that late game tech that you can fall back on. Instead, he was just trying to end it. And if you don't outright kill a Terran player, well, the war of attrition is usually not going to go your way. So Oliveira understanding the late game on at least the level Dark does. And goes out taking the game. And that'll be a 1-game lead for the world champion over the former. Alright, next map is Royal Blood. Whose will spill here? Definitely another late game map as well. We've seen some of the most ridiculous games, especially featuring Dark here. Honestly, there were some real opportunities to just win the game outright, I think, for Oliveira. Dark only just barely held at the third. Maybe if he had pressed the issue a little more strongly, he had just continued. Also, I want to talk about the sim. Like, this is... A lot of people talk about APM and micro. But the best players win the battle before it's even fought. Sun Tzu. Actually, okay, Oliveira has literally said, if you watched his... I did the transcribed interview on the second channel, if you haven't checked that out. But he literally referenced Sun Tzu and essentially setting up the game to win the battle before it even starts. And his Sim City at the third, understanding that the biggest weakness with these committed siege tank pushes is counterattacks, because you just can't afford to have many units at home, because you're really trying to fortify that front position. So he essentially hard-walled off his third. And if he hadn't committed all of that to the wall off, I think Dark just gets in, and that's how he starts to pick apart. You saw what he wanted to do with all those Zerglings. So Oliveira really channeling his Sun Tzu there. And it made all the difference in getting him to the late game and keeping him alive. So you heard it here first. The Bronze League heroes who put 12 depots down all together were right. Well, not exactly. The way it's set up, so there are little gaps, so the Zerglings get funneled into the Widowmine traps, essentially. They're like fly traps, but for Zerglings. Made a huge difference in the efficiency of the defenders. But here we are. Game 2. With a Banshee on the way. Are we going Cloak? Yep. Pretty much. We're going to play it exactly the same. I don't think either player... I take it back. There were roaches in the last game. Dark tried the roaches. I think the roaches did fine. The roaches did really well. It's just that Dark then built 85 drones after it. A very Scarlet-esque drone explosion. And almost lost the game to the first timing attack, because he couldn't quite put enough on the field to match it before it got entrenched. Overlord chased out. Should be taken down. Yep. Lair on the... Quite a quick lair. Is he rushing Baneling speed? That, which would be a bit of an interesting choice. The Overlord saw Cloak on the way. Saw all 3 racks. And the 3rd command center. So all the relevant info. Also the fact that there was no more Hellion production going on. I like this. Using the Banshee. Banshee can't do anything but stare menacingly at the Overlord, but the Marines can shoot it, at least. Fly a little higher! You know that's illegal! Then the Overlord would just fly higher, and then what do we have? An escalating arms race? But it doesn't have any arms! Like and subscribe for my treatment for schizophrenia. Well, Baneling Nest on the way. Lair Tech not being used for anything particularly early. Macro Hatch for Dark. Maybe you just wanted to kind of get a read of things. If you don't have the lair in time, and you don't have the option at least for Baneling speed, then early stim timings most definitely can be an existential threat. Banshee's heading back home. I think Oliveira likes him as just a solid defensive option as well. You have those if Dark decides to do some big roach timing or a big Zergling counterattack, then having those Banshees at least early on, it made all the difference in game 1. And as an option here, just keeps Dark on his toes. Okay, keeps him controlled. Though not particularly much, Dark's creep spread has really expanded out. There hasn't been much pressure outside of the Banshees. He didn't build that many Hellions. So Dark is already halfway across the map with 4 bases, going on 5. Building 3 hatcheries at once, as he do. One of the only players who will invest in multiple macro hatches in the main. I don't understand why no one else does. Like, let's be honest here. You're not going to spend your money otherwise. Look at Dark. He's got 600 minerals, 700 gas. He literally can't spend it. He has too much. There's just not enough larvae. Well, everything coming together in the middle of the map. Up and down the ramp. Whoever controls it will probably be in the lead at the end of this. Banshee's still going to work. But the Queen's intact, adding their anti-air capabilities. A lot of the Queen's bruised, but the Baneling speed completes and rolls into the army. Oliveira not quite looking the direction he needed to. And the Marines are melted by the Banelings as they roll in. Dark with 1-1 done, competing directly with Oliveira there. Actually has a slight jump on 2-2. So Oliveira only added his +2 weapons, not the armor upgrade yet. There we go. But almost dead even. 69 to 79 workers in favor of Dark. The Mules will close that gap. Widowmine already split off some Zerglings to deal with it, but the Widowmine is picked up as Oliveira gonna drop out on the low ground. Zerglings notorious for their inability to shoot down. That's it for sure. Medevacs pick up and slide away. Drilling claws, as I believe it was pointed out, but double factory quite early on, and now adding on so many more barracks. Oliveira focused on really putting as much on the field as he can. The Marines, the mines, the medevacs, and maybe at some point Marauders. Though he doesn't really have any of those yet. Ultralisk Cavern. I don't know why I said it like that, but one of the quickest Ultra Caverns I've seen, essentially since the diet patch earlier this year. Queen almost gets the medevac, but it gets out of there for now. I think realizing that this many Widow mines... ooh, another mine hit. A dozen drones. Drilling Claws is done. But Ultralisk against Mass Marine Mine, neither of which are particularly great at dealing with Ultras, especially early on. The mines do a lot of damage, yes, but it can negate a lot of the splash damage without having to worry about Zergling micro. And there aren't a dozen depots at the third. The Zerglings are going to get into the mineral line. There's nothing here to defend. Oliveira caught completely unguarded back at home. Even some drones are here. For some reason. I'm not a... I don't know what's going on there, but drop in the back of the main. The drones are heading out. The Ultralisk Cavern will be spotted. 25 SCVs down. Drones, they may have been pulled off the line to avoid some of the medevacs. Trying to target down the Ultra Cavern. There's one transfuse ready. Oh, he saves it. Oh my God, what a save. That one transfuse makes all the difference, and Oliveira does not have the economy to just be spamming ghosts right now. In fact, he doesn't even have a Ghost Academy, so that's going to make things a little more difficult. Widowmine hit. Could have been worse. Still very bad. That one demonstrating what I'm talking about. A massive connection. So many Zerglings dead. But the Ultras are in production. Oliveira knows his time is limited. Once these Ultras come out with chitinous plating, he doesn't really have the army composition at the moment to easily deal with it. Gonna cut through a hatchery. The drone counts 78 to 50 SCVs. Medevac's almost out of energy to heal these badly bruised units. Ultras on the field, ready to chew through. There's just not that much back at home for Oliveira. But Dark, his supply is not looking particularly healthy either. He lost the hatchery. All those drones were busy fighting instead of mining in that curious counterattack. 4 Ultras now. The Ultras kind of have an expiration date. If the game slows down, the Ultras become easier and easier to deal with. But early on, when you don't have those direct counters, that's when they're most dangerous. Or if you've already taken so much economic damage, they're able to crack it open. But that's why I say, the longer it goes on, the more you recover from that, the easier it is to tailor your unit composition to dealing with them directly. So Dark, we'll see if he sticks with the Ultras or if these are the only ones he ends up building. A few Banelings rolling. Queen goes down. Marines are picked up. Counterattack, chewing through a planetary. One Ultra down, but the planetary itself is taken out. At the same time, Oliveira drop at the third, and the fourth, and the center. But the undefended third is once again the weak underbelly of Oliveira, and the Ultras just chew through the SCVs. Oh my, a single Marauder survives. The Zergling should be enough. Snipes out the Ultra Cavern. 2 more Ultras built, I think, just to take advantage of it while he could. Oliveira consolidates his medevacs, but there are more medevacs than units within them. Everyone just kind of retreating back to base, trying to take stock. I don't think either player is entirely aware of exactly how much the other lost, as clearly they're both throwing punches all over the place. Dark took out a lot of SCVs and the 4th base, but he lost a base of his own, the Ultraless Cavern, and some drones, so he is not doing amazing himself, though I think he comes out ahead in that exchange. Has to rebuild the 4th command center, Oliveira. Another Ultra. Gonna be smacked down by a Widowmine after so many Marauder hits as well. The Spore Crawler's in position to deal with this. Counterattack stuffed at the door. Ultras trying to work their way through. Spore Crawlers in range of the Liberators, at least one of them. The Ultras working underneath. Still a hectic game. The 3rd base still vulnerable. Another 19 SCVs go down. These are unsustainable losses, even for a Terran with mules, especially as he loses the majority of his army on the map. Oliveira. The weak point in this game was the hard point of the last one, where he had such a well-defended 3rd, and it was incredibly important in his victory. This time around, Dark has found the 3rd all but empty, with not a wall, no real defenses. And it keeps getting refilled with SCVs for the Ultras to kill. And right now, 33 SCVs is not enough. That is not enough to compete. Dark has a massive income advantage, and that will translate into an army supply and overall supply advantage. Oliveira is one bad fight away from this series being tied up. Still, Infestors on the field. There's no ghosts. Widowmine connects. Drops into the main. No queens here. Burrow on the way. Another drop. And no real defenses from Dark, who just goes for the counterattack yet again. We've seen this story before. The SCVs chewed up. The Ultras changing directions. The Bio Army holding it together. Dark scrambling to defend. Widowmine takes another chunk. Another hatchery dies. Infestors on the way. The lack of ghosts, though, is going to be the continued sticking point as the infestor count grows. More Widowmines dotting the field, but the burrowed infestors slide right by him. And Oliveira only has 3 orbitals right now. One of them floating from the main over to a desperate 4th base. He may now realize how bad this position is. There's no real choice here. He does not have the scans with which to be seeing all the... Well, he can't just safety scan everywhere. He has to wait until the fight. But by that point, it's probably too late. As I'm sure he wants to drop mules, but is tactfully avoiding it. Burrowed infestors. Oh no, Widowmines. Finding some hits. 3rd base. There's enough Zerglings to be a real threat here. Adrenal glands is done. Fungals, the Widowmine to reveal it. Dark, testing the waters. He's got burrowed lings on the opposite side. He knows exactly when and where Oliveira expands. More banelings. Everything's slowed down as neither side has such a great economy they can just refill their units. Honestly, I think this is favoring Oliveira, who struggled. I don't know if Dark realized how good of a position he was in. And now the army supplies are drawing closer to even. And the Whittlemans continue to rack up the kills. Dark is still very much in the lead. But ghosts are coming out. The infestors have not really found that much value here. But pops out of the ground. Just continues fungally. They said there'd be fun gals out here. Oh, that space was accidental. Well, Oliveira now has the ghosts, which were the difference makers, and so often are. They've hit the field, which I think will trigger Dark's attack. He doesn't want to let them build up anymore. The Liberator's mostly uncontested. No neural parasite. But the Banelings just roll in, and Oliveira loses 23 SCVs. Dark has just obliterated the economy. Every time Oliveira wins a fight, it seems like he loses most of his economy somewhere else. Dark is not even bothering to fight heads up until he has an overwhelming advantage. Fungal's EMPs are not gonna cut it. GG. Dark shores up many of the weaknesses of last game. And he ties it up. Clearly understanding where it went wrong. And realizing, even if it's Ultras, which are not well known as the greatest late game unit, he just went straight to it. He got that hive tech. And Oliveira never really, well, the third base needed at least like a bunker or something. But just never found the space to protect it. And finds himself eventually getting whittled down to nothing by Dark's just merciless late game. Well, one more. Either way. 1-1 going into Neo Humanity. Well, Jimmy, please. The game. Reactor first. And a command center. So one racks expand, but not the one you'd think. Meanwhile, Dark with hatch first. Hatch pool gas. Or hatch gas. Yeah, hatch gas pool. He sees the command center. I think it was hatch pool gas. He sees the command center and pulls 2 off of gas in order to get a quick third. Interesting, the flexibility of the build there. Flexibility. No. No. No, never. But on seeing that it's not going to be an early proxy Rex or a at least unlikely to be a Mass Reaper build, because he usually wall off. He decides he doesn't need that earlier Zergling speed, but instead wants a third hatchery. And the 2 Marines come out, but there's not actually like a Overlord pillar. There's just a bunch of empty space out here. The industrial complex, which is just a bunch of airspace. Quite interesting. Looks cool as well. Very important. What are we doing here? He's got reactor Marines. He's building individual Hellions. There's some sort of medevac push, very likely. But is it gonna be Hellbats? Dark, on the other hand, is just doing his thing. Not even mining gas. Focusing on queens, drones. The Overlord doesn't quite see the third command center, but if he pokes in for a moment. I'm not sure what that would tell him, as it's not a particularly late third, but it is later than your average 3cc build. So medevac on the way. Slurps up the Marines, heads out. Zergling being hunted by a handful of... an odd amount of Hellions, quite literally. 3 Hellions. But why are there 3? Is an interesting question. We'll see if Dark realizes just based on the number of Hellions. He's also going to see the medevac in a moment. Zoning out with the queens. Enough Zerglings. Yeah, gonna see the Marines drop out. Oh, but the Hellions come in! He forgot about those. And 4 drones. 5. Oh, and he catches them, wraps around, and kills them. It felt like it was going to be much worse. But 5 drones, and he gets a couple of the Hellions. Dark is a bit supply blocked here, which has been a trend in this series. Looking for the medevac. The Marines come in. The Zergling's stuffed at the door. Will come back. Tail. Well, I don't know. Do Zerglings have tails? Yeah, they definitely have tails. Tail between their legs. Trying to deal with something else. As, the hard counter to Zerglings is a hard wall. Roach Warren, double Evo, which clearly shows the direction Dark is taking this game. 4 more gases. So it's time for the next phase of the build. Double medevac drop heading out. Joining up with the badly bruised surviving one. Third base, gonna know the bite of the Zerglings. I guess claws, not really bite. He's built a mace, a Zergling checkpoint here. I assume this is intentional. Meanwhile, microwave, I'm just watching the Marines. Drones are pulled. Where are the Zerglings? 11 drones down. I'm sorry, I was so distracted by this weird look that I didn't realize Dark essentially had nothing back at home to defend. Well, just drops down the depots. A bit of an uncharacteristic mistake, though the queens and drones eventually deal with the medevacs. 11 drones down for a medevac follow-up. Quite an unforced error there, I feel. 10, a whole bunch of roaches in production. Dark is looking for the roach spam here. He wants to bludgeon Oliveira, though the damage he's already taken is definitely going to blunt that attack, which sounds like it would be a good thing, but in this case, or soften it. I think that's more accurate. All right. Adjectives are great. Adjectives are... Oh god, I ran out of adjectives to describe adjectives. Meanwhile, the Marines slide into the 4th, killing 5 more drones as Dark scrambles back and forth with Slochus. No speed upgrade yet, and it really, he's feeling it with Marines on either side. Still 68, 69 drones, which is nice enough to keep it together. But clearly Oliveira stretching Dark thin here. As 1-1 about to complete. Realizes it's going to be a roach-based composition. Dark, he's kind of missed the timing to do critical damage on the other side of the map. Oliveira taking this very seriously. Triple bunker. Just anything to zone out those roaches, to slow them down. And that is a huge part of defending against the massive roaches, is any force multipliers you can add here. And Corrosive Bile knocking out a Widow Mine at the front. Falls back of the bunker, taken out immediately, but it drew a bunch of the Corrosive Biles. The SCVs are pulled. Another volley. 18 SCVs down. So despite his preparation, still a lot of economic damage. But with the siege tank and the damage output of the Marines, it looks like Oliveira... Ooh. Reinforcing roaches are continuing to power their way through. And he didn't underestimate the power of these roaches and ravagers. But even in all that preparation, which was relatively hasty, even with all the defenses, even with the SCVs pulled, even with the damage he did on the other side of the map, Oliveira's still very close to being outright broken by that attack. He's still got 53 SCVs, got 2-2 on the way, but Dark on the edge of victory there. And during it all, he still had plenty of economy back at home. He wasn't all in by any means. Adding 2-2, Oliveira's going to have an advantage in that regard. But the income tilts more decisively towards the Korean Zerg. 2 factories pumping siege techs. And +2/+2 infantry weapons and armor, though, are going to tilt the momentum back in favor of the reigning world champion. At least for a while. No infestation pit for Dark. Means no hive, no vipers, none of those absolutely critical infestors that Dark has used to great effect in both games. Oliveira looking pretty good after a bare bones, well, a near defense. Not a bare bones defense. He threw everything into it. An all bones defense. Yeah. Speaking of bones, the bone trench here. The part of the map that almost everyone avoids with those cooling towers. I have yet to see anyone use it in a fight to drop it on their opponent's army. Because, of course, it's, you know, the timing is almost impossible. And you can kind of circumvent that part of it, but Dark is maxed out. That's a lot of siege tanks, though. Even with a really solid flank, without blinding cut. Yes, starts an infestation pit. Dark realizing, this is not an army I'm gonna be able to fight. So he doesn't. He just goes to the other side of the map. Siege tanks popping out. Dark gonna try to fight a war of attrition, try to control this chaos in what is now a base trade. Roaches and Ravagers on either side. The Corrosive Biles, easy enough to walk into if you're not paying attention, and that is what Dark is going to rely on. He's still maxed out. He's up the ramp. Units are going to spawn into a world of death and destruction. And which side am I talking about? The answer is yes. Roaches and Ravagers, none of the tanks are sieged right now. Fires a volley. Doesn't aim at the tanks, though. Still, one tank in the main will be taken out, doing a lot of damage here. Oliveira might be able to pull together a defense, and that was the stopping block in Game 1. All the tanks will unsiege at the front. Another shotgun blast to Corrosive Bile, trying to hold. Roaches trickling in. Roaches at the third. Oliveira down to 98 supply, but mostly suffering worker losses. Another set of Corrosive Biles does land, and starts to work on the tank count. So, oh, the main base, though. He didn't hold. There weren't enough units. And Oliveira doesn't break through. He's not able to do the critical damage to Dark that he's suffering himself. Units are popping out. Only the Liberator is really protecting them. The medevacs come back home, but chased by the remaining Roaches and Ravagers that were defending against the units inside. Firing at the orbital command, which will be repaired after being lifted up. Oliveira rebuilds. He couldn't spend his money. I think he stopped building units for a time in the main. building 5 wrecks, though maybe wants to consider canceling them at this point. Oh, he doesn't really need these. He's out of money. It was a great idea right up until this moment. When Dark, he just doesn't have the income to build units out of the production facilities he already had, preparing for a base trade that never quite materialized. I guess it was a sort of one, but Dark he knew he couldn't fight the army. And in the most dark and it's like a Bronze League Grandmaster strat. Oh, you can't fight their army? So don't. But he's still delayed with the Ravagers back at home. And he didn't commit so much that Oliveira could just move over his base. And now, Dark with the Roach Ravager doesn't even use the Hive this time around. I am hard-pressed to see an exit strategy here that ends up with him in a winning position. Oliveira. Dark seems like he's got what it takes, and he's breaking through. The Ravager count is just too damn high. 3-3 is on the way. And, 290 supply. Fighting till the very end, but this time darkness falls upon the army. And Oliveira splitting and stimming and stuttering his way. But with more medevacs, the Marines and Marauders, Dark, I think, will be taking this one. Knocks down the orbital and takes the series. Dark, not able to break through Oliveira. And his incredibly well-established late game. But any cracks in the defenses, and Dark streams through with his overwhelming Zerg. Beautifully done. Honestly, a great series. Oliveira able to hang with him, proving he's a top-tier player. It wasn't just a fluke. But on most days, Dark is still the final boss. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I made your day a little bit better. Good luck, have fun. I'll see you next time. Stay chill.
Hell, it's about